This is the End of the Road podcast with your host, Michael Coco. Exploring the horizons we never touch because we're already there.
Welcome, and thanks for listening. Tonight we're off to Brighton in the United Kingdom to speak with Oli Genn-Bash, the Fungi Consultant. This is a wonderful and freewheeling conversation that I'm especially thankful for on this Thanksgiving weekend. We cover a lot of territories, from animism to all these wonderful psychedelic jazz doom band called Codex Serafini. And you might find, like I do at the end of this conversation, that all these disparate ends and tendrils kind of are joined together in a vast mycelial network. And perhaps the first clue of this would be if you go down the rabbit hole and investigate where the band Codex Serafini got its name from, you'll find that it came from a codex of the last century from an Italian author. And it's one of the first works of eco-fiction that some have said was an early critique of the information age, and others, such as Donald Hofstadter, called the book a glorification of entropy, chaos, and incomprehensibility. And don't worry, we'll play some of their songs on this podcast as well. And without further ado, here's Oli. Before we take our deep dive into animism, do you recommend any mushroom stacks or nootropics or adaptogens that we should get started with to facilitate our journey?
Genuinely one of my favorite questions. It's really on the tip of my tongue at the moment. I've got my lion's mane and cacao at the moment, and this morning I had some cordyceps, which I really enjoy. I've also been recently taking ginkgo biloba. In terms of stacks, there's more leeway in places like the US where you can stack with the psilocybin, with the lion's mane, which I think has a really nice synergistic effect in very low doses. What I've been finding is that cordyceps in combination with cacao is really good because cacao is a vasodilator. It's also related to your heart, and cordyceps seems to have some alignment with the heart chakra as well. But the vasodilation that cacao brings is actually helping, I think, the benefits of cordyceps in that cordyceps is increasing the amount of oxygenated blood getting to your muscles. So then if you're opening up those blood vessels, that's going to create clearer pathways for things like exercise, getting that necessary stuff, the molecules that get stimulated from ingesting cordycepin that help with energy and fatigue. I think that just kind of makes it more accessible to your body.
Yeah. And so what happens when you stack those with psilocybin then?
So interestingly, there's a lot spoken about with neuroplasticity and lion's mane and psilocybin having this effect in the brain where, in theory, you're helping with the growth of new brain cells. But from speaking to some herbalists, it seems that there's a lot happening in the gut, creating an indirect effect, possibly something to do with the way in which we convert the building blocks of serotonin to serotonin or dopamine, the effect that has on the vagus nerve, how that calms us down and might have an indirect effect on mood, cognition as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What about, because you see them combined with coffee so much in the States, and what sort of synergistic effects or not do those have with coffee, for example?
Yes, the or not is a really interesting point. I've been speaking to a few companies that suggest you have to get the balance quite right because there's something about coffee or caffeine that can potentially hinder the effects of lion's mane. I think coffee potentially might. I mean, the jury's still out because these products are still quite new. But I think certainly something like cordyceps would pair well with coffee. I've seen more blends like that coming out, and coffee is, I would say, one of the most effective plants out there for providing us with energy. It's no surprise that there's been wars and people traveling long distances to get it, because it really does work, and there's not really anything like caffeine out there. I think you could as well balance it out with other types of mushrooms. It's not necessarily done so much, but you could in theory have a blend of different mushrooms, which if you find that maybe coffee gives you some jitters but you still want the benefits of caffeine, you might be able to pair it with something like reishi that just calms the system down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many different things to play with in a way. But
Yeah.
how do you if we want to start talking about animism, how do you relate to using these different sorts of mushrooms in your practice or in your morning? And I guess what I was thinking about, is there something more? I guess what I'm resisting is sort of the standard thing that we're going to be taking them like some sort of medicine, like I'm going to take it to achieve this, some sort of functional thing where perhaps with mushrooms or any food, there's sort of different relationships to explore with them that might even bring out some different benefits than what we're really, just a gross materialistic thing that, I'm going to get a use of this and I'm going to use it for my purposes, as opposed to some sort of ongoing relationship that can foster something perhaps deeper.
You're absolutely right. For me, a lot, when it comes to the education surrounding mushrooms, I really like to tell the different stories, and a lot of those stories come from places like Southeast Asia. So lion's mane for me is the best example. There's something almost, maybe not even almost, there seems to be personhood given to it. So there's a sect of monks in Japan that live in the mountains called the Yamabushi monks, and lion's mane in Japanese is actually called Yamabushitake. So it's named after the monks because they revere it so much. These monks even wear little pom-poms that they dangle from their clothes to represent the lion's mane. They call the lion's mane the mountain priest. So that's more than just something that you take and it aids you in something. Okay, it was recommended traditionally for aiding with meditation, but then what does that really mean? If they're revering it in a way, they're engaging in a relationship with it. Similarly, we see in traditional Chinese medicine, reishi being called the mushroom of immortality. That's giving it a really high status, and reishi was really highly prized. You see it quite a lot in classical Chinese art. So these mushrooms are considered superior herbs in traditional Chinese medicine, and I think that way of relating to them as something which to us might sound fanciful. You're calling it a priest. You're calling it the mushroom of immortality. That kind of sounds magical, fairy tale like. But actually, these are signifiers of how to relate to it. The real importance of these mushrooms can come through. I think similarly with the psychedelic mushrooms, there is that sense of agency, of personhood. And let's not forget, these things are closer to us than they are to plants. So it would make sense that we attribute a bit more agency, a bit more spirit to them. And there is that danger now that they're being put into capsules and into formulations. And what does that do in terms of how our bodies are responding to it?
Yeah. Does it sever the mycelial network, so to speak, when you put them into a capsule? And that's what I think is the kind of the interesting part with the fact that they do have a network that, and I think that in some ways our network among different humans is a little bit more not as evident, perhaps, or at least, maybe the internet's changing all that, eventually we'll see that we are sort of all interconnected, like a mycelial network. But just for me, that you wonder about the magic in them, or how to relate for them, is the fact that they are sort of more whole, perhaps, than we are in some ways. I don't know. It's.
I often talk about a great teacher, Kalindi E, who was a proponent of very high dose mushroom experiences, 20 plus dried grams. And this was the going to that point because for him it wasn't trying to be more psychedelic than someone else. It wasn't a contest or anything like that, but it was the idea that, okay, if you want to get to a certain point, you need to put more fuel in the rocket. If you want to go further out into space and you really want to get into what these things are teaching us, moving further from that point of healing, working through trauma, but actually getting into similar spaces as you would do with DMT. And I asked him, at that point, is it that distinguishable from the DMT realm? He said, not really at these kind of doses. And for him, it was always this idea that, okay, you're always going to have facilitators and people doing things in ceremony in certain ways, and that can provide containers for people. But in certain scenarios and at certain doses, actually everything is contained within that mushroom. They provide the ceremony, the hymns, the setting. Everything is there. Everything is at a point of introducing yourself to an experience, to an organism. So I think that can be quite empowering, and I think that's where a lot of the particularly interesting, unusual, maybe even mischievous, we might say, and magical stuff comes from.
Yeah. So did you speak with him when he was still alive about the different?
Yes. Yeah.
That must have been really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
Yeah.
Myself and a great teacher as well, Darren LeBaron, who has followed on from Kalindi's teachings. Me and Darren hosted a talk with Kalindi back in 2012 where he spoke for 3.5 hours, and it was everything you could imagine it would be in 3.5 hours.
Oh yeah. What is that still available somewhere, or recorded, or is it all? Is it in the network?
Somewhere maybe in the ether. It was a time, I guess, when there was still the beginnings of this resurgence, and it wasn't so it was very much getting wrapped up in that moment, in that interaction, and we possibly could have thought more about, okay, the social media side, or if it had been a few years later down the line, that would have been a bit more streamlined.
Yeah, because he actually is residing not too far from where I am, and he was in Detroit, where his stomping grounds. So it's kind of interesting gentleman. So how do you, in the course of your day, and how do you incorporate sort of quote unquote animistic principles in sort of your relationship with things, or your relationship with your own mind, relationship with mushrooms, whatever is arising?
For me, certainly the experiences that I've had with the psychedelic mushrooms in nature, I feel have imprinted something on the way in which I'm engaging with the world. So every time I go, I live quite close to a small bit of woodland, and at the moment it's quite cold, it's quite muddy, it's been raining, and that way of engaging with the energy of the forest when it is winter, going in with quieter, softer footsteps, thinking more, looking more. Things might be slippery, not being so loud, having to move in a way to keep myself warm, and understanding where that shift has happened from things being, abundant to now becoming slower and colder. And living in a place like the UK, which is often quite cold, I think that has an impact on the animistic tendencies and the way in which you engage with the world. So when we do have spring and summer, it really is this celebration. It feels like you're joining in with the spirit of the forest. When you start to see the buds of spring, there's an essence of aliveness. It's that's what I really feel from my experiences with the mushrooms. You can't escape this aliveness. You can't escape this sense that everything is infused with this quality. Now, what that quality is depends on who you are, how strong things like community narratives are. In a place like the UK, those are quite weak. So you have to sort of construct them yourself, or delve into some of the pagan wisdom and iconography. So I have weirdly strong digital communication when it comes to this side of things. I have one friend in particular, William Rowlandson, who's teacher of mysticism among many other things, and is a absolute font of knowledge for the wisdom of these isles in Britain. And he will always, without fail, at every pagan festival, send me a big WhatsApp really detailing everything about the significance of this time of the year, the celestial motions, what's happening with the sun, what's happening with the harvest, what's happening with the animals, what's happening with the plants, the fungi, and remaining in that community, even if it's not directly, even if it is across the digital airwaves. For me, it's something about this country that I can really connect to, because I find a lot of things about the UK quite difficult, having things like a royal family and what seems to be an increasingly right-wing government, and a lot of issues with racism and poverty, but there is a real richness here, real aliveness of spirit, of this being a place where elves and pixies and wizards are from, and that when I really stop and listen to the forest, it does feel magical, even if there's everything going on around it that's trying to take away from that spirit.
Yeah. I'm wondering. So the a lot of the spiritual connections you were referencing were more or less external to you. You were talking about the forest or your country or people. And I guess what I was wondering is, do you ever have a relationship with your thoughts as sort of animistic manifestations as well, and that even though there is a connection between you and the forest or something, a lot of times it's sort of moderated through your own mind, and that the sort of the inner, the distinction between inner and outer, about if in terms of like spirits arising. I mean, sometimes I actually will just think that like every thought is a spirit almost, and relate to it that way. And sometimes it gets, it's difficult, but yet in a way that's a way of sort of not attaching thoughts and having a relationship with them, and having more sort of flexibility about what you can interact with, perhaps. I was just wondering if that resonates with you, that the whole idea of the inner and outer spirits, or the inner connection, becomes, at least for me, it's sort of blurry, or not.
Yes.
And how I guess what your reactions with mushrooms would interact with that too, I'm sure.
It's interesting because the experiences with mushrooms where there is a point at which, okay, the thoughts aren't mine. There's what feels like a download of information. There feels like what's tapping into something greater. So then the I sort of escapes that equation somewhat. And I wonder if it is just thought is happening and we're tapping into this space. But certainly for me, in that animistic sense, it's almost like I can understand where that dissolution of ego happens, whether it's temporary or not. I think it is just this temporary moment where we can then, I often find myself energetically trying to connect with, I don't know, there might be the same kind of bird that comes back and visits the garden every day. And that's an external thing, but actually in terms of how I am energetically resonating in that moment is through the experiences of mushrooms. It's like, okay, this is just a different manifestation of what could be a sort of neutral monistic essence coming through, like a pantheistic or something similar to animism, this essence which is coming through, and okay, it's appearing as bird and I'm there as human, but actually in that moment when you can drop that individualized energy, I guess, then there's some sense of resonating.
Yeah. Oh, what you said about dropping your individual energy made a lot of sense, and because it's almost, and I don't know if this is kind of your experience, but like the fundamental archetype of Buddhism is Buddha in his moment of awakening. He's confronting or interacting with the demon, who's more or less trying to distract him through the mind with images, in a lot of different things, and how he relates to that, or is, he goes down to the ground. He points and connects with the earth, as opposed to like this mind energy, perhaps, that sort of is more frantic. And it's almost like sometimes I get the feeling like the mind and our thoughts are almost just like a flame that kind of burns and flickers and goes in and out, but doesn't, sort of more ephemeral to something that's deeper and quieter and stiller than that. But yet so much of our reality is coming through this active mind, that that's kind of those are sort of the dynamics that I not so much think about, because the whole point is not thinking, but that's sort of like the experience. That's the experience of is it the inner outer getting blurring and sort of trying to go into the ground, the stillness more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reminded of my experiences with San Pedro, Achuma, and what I understand is people might have visions, but actually the traditional wisdom is like, yeah, okay, there's going to be visions, but don't worry about them so much. Don't get distracted. It's actually what it's doing to you as a medicine in that real grounding essence that I find. I really love it as a. I don't even really see it as a psychedelic. I see this as this kind of, it's a grounding, connecting medicine that is quite gentle, but it's also quite profound in its action, where it is, for me, there's almost a kind of rhythm to it. There's a tapping back into this resonance of, yeah, there is a way in which things move in this flux, in this way you could call it natural resonance, natural law. And so I think possibly we can get distracted with a lot of the stuff that we're seeing. And for me, what you said about not thinking, that's a particular joyful aspect I find of the psychedelic experience, when I'm walking through the forest and I'm hearing the sound of the trees creaking and just observing everything that's going on. And then I catch myself not thinking. And then it's broken. I go, damn, I was in the moment. I was in between the thoughts. Or as Miles Davis said, it's the notes in between the notes, which is where the meaning comes. Because, okay, it's that stillness. It's that part that recognizes, okay, there's stuff before, there's stuff after, but actually now in this presence, there just is. And then from there we create.
I know you play the saxophone, so we're going to have to come back to Miles Davis in just a second. But can I talk about one more thing before we take the musical break?
Yeah, no, for sure.
So we've been talking about the thoughts coming, the thoughts we creating the thoughts. But what about if it's coming from another direction, like theurgy, where we're just empty vessels of other things coming in, perhaps. Is that an experience that resonates with you as on any different level?
Yes, yeah. There's an experience I talk about quite a lot, which is quite probably the strongest mushroom experience I've ever had, where it was, I think, just over the sort of 4 dried gram range of Liberty Cap mushrooms, the Semilanceata, which, if anyone knows about them, they are quite potent, but they can be quite cheeky and mischievous. And I, for some reason, exclusively on these strain of mushrooms, have extraterrestrial experiences. I don't have them on any other types of psychedelics, any other types of mushrooms, but with Semilanceata. And on this dose, I had a really cathartic, beautiful healing experience that was quite rapid. And then very clearly they said, okay, you've had the healing, now's the time for the download. And out loud I went, what? And it really was that. It really felt like, okay, this stuff is not about me. This stuff is not related to my life or anything that I've gone through. It is, and I was being shown, I guess, through closed eye visuals, quite clear scenes of another planet, of young and old people all together in a community, everyone being taken care of, everyone having everything that they need. And then scenes of the earth in a way which was unfolding to me, as if to say, sorry guys, you've got everything wrong. You've started drilling into the earth and taking resources out of it to try and explore the universe with rocket propulsion and it's never going to work because you need to be using wormhole technology. And genuinely, this quite clearly, plainly laid out. I hadn't read Carl Sagan's book Contact, which was sort of what this was about. I don't think I'd seen the movie at the time. So I don't think this was, I was just having a trip about this and my mind was making it up, because I've had consistent extraterrestrial experiences with these certain types of mushrooms where I've had almost in that kind of DMT like space where I've been welcomed back. I've been told, well done for tuning back into the right radio frequency. We've missed you. It's been such a long time. Being then shown scenes here. This is where we live. And I'm not questioning it. There's no reason to say, this is nonsense, because I don't know what it is. It's that saying, if you know, you know. The resonance is so strong in those moments where I just think this has to be knowledge that we're tapping into. And the way that Kalindi, the way that Darren LeBaron talks about these organisms as they are edible technology.
Yeah. Or maybe we're the, sometimes I think about it this way, that we think that we are sort of higher up on the quote unquote food chain compared to like vegetables or plants. And, we're planting carrots and then eating them and thinking, there's no relationship between just, it's just like this, there's this inanimate object that I'm going to put in a little pill and then eat it to take it in my body. But, at one level, why would the food chain stop there? Why would we think that we're the top of the food chain when maybe we're carrots and some other dish? I mean, why would you think that it would stop there? And perhaps what we're doing of for lack of a better word, harmonizing, synchronizing, these stories where we feel like we're connecting with something, or these experiences where, like theurgy, where something is coming in and possessing us. Maybe that is, some sort of different sort of organism is connecting with us in a way that we don't understand. It would be just as unintelligible as a carrot understanding that it's being eaten by a human, and what's going on between us and this other thing is just as mystical. But yet when the carrot comes into us, it becomes us in a way. So perhaps it is just that moment becomes something, it connects with something more than what it is. And likewise, when we connect with this something else, we become somewhat more than what we are. And I don't know. This is complete sheer speculation. But,
it really speaks to a lot of my experiences, because do you know what? When I was younger and first encountering psychedelics, I mean, I do really like mushrooms, but I feel like I had a lot more fun with them, or they were less weird when I was younger. I don't know if it's something to do with brain chemistry, or I just don't really consider them to be psychedelic. Like if I take some LSD, I'm gonna put on some cool music. I'll do some painting. Later on in the trip, might watch a weird movie. We'll have some crazy conversations. We'll go for a walk. It has, for all intents and purposes, the kind of aspects of a stereotypical psychedelic trip. And then when I consume mushrooms, it's like my conscious brain, before I take the mushroom, says, okay, I'm going to consume some psychedelics. And then when the mushrooms start working, it's like they don't tell me off, but they make it clear, hey, we're not just something that you take. Sorry. We're going to be doing things. We're here to clean stuff up, to sort out your brain, to sort out your planet, your soil, plastic, whatever it is, your gut health. I do think there's something where they can maybe take us by surprise. And I'm often aware that, and I'm talking sometimes in surprisingly low doses, where I feel like it's almost like running a computer defrag program. I've taken something and it's not necessarily doing an upgrade, but it's set up some kind of software that's running, and it can be a bit strange, and often it really does feel like, hey, you have to let us do the work here. We're the ones in charge. We're the more intelligent beings. You just let us work on your human brain.
Yeah. All right. So maybe we should take a musical interlude and let this integrate a little bit. The carrots and everything. So Codex Serafini, right?
Yes.
Okay. So can I ask what that means? Your band name?
So,
or is that a secret?
No, it's not at all. It's anything but a secret, actually. So the Codex Serafini is taken from a book called the Codex Serafinianus, which was written by a man who's still alive called Luigi Serafini. And I encourage everyone to check out this book. It's like a tome. It's a massive book. And I was, interestingly or coincidentally, sent a PDF of it 15 years ago by one of my good friends, and it's essentially an encyclopedia of an alien world from the perspective of a child, I think, but it's so involved. There's its own language, taxonomy of plants, animals, technology, everything you could possibly imagine, just these literally out of this world illustrations and just amazing artwork. And this guy's house in Italy is all done up like things from his book. So just a real source of inspiration. And it was just coincidental that I'd known about this book before I'd met the band and joined it.
So did the book come before the band, or was the band already named? Which one came first?
The band was named after the book.
Right, but so the band already existed before you joined it.
The band already existed before I joined it, so it was a coincidence. There was a band called Codex Serafini, and I was like, and they came to play in the town that I was living in, and I went, "Who's this band called Codex?" I know what and I went up to them. I was like, "Hey, I know what the Codex Serafini is." And then we got chatting, and we just coincidentally we were into quite specifically a lot of the same music, and really resonate with each other personality wise. A lot of good energy, and it's within the realms of it having the energy of otherworldly music in line with the Codex Serafini.
Yeah. All right. So should we take a visit to the other world right now and
Sure.
listen to one of the tracks? Which one do you want to start off with?
Which ones did I send you? I'm trying to remember now. I think there was
Pity Them for Giving Life and Keep the Mask That Fits. But we could do others. Those are just what you said.
Pitying Them for Giving Life is one of the they're two of the singles. So we could play Keep the Mask That Fits is the most recent single. So we could play that one.
Yeah, let's do that. And I would say that what's the deal with the masks that everybody's wearing? Those are so cool. I don't know if I've seen a band with masks like that, or maybe I don't know. Yeah. I don't get out a lot, but maybe I haven't seen like the little. They're like little. Well, what are they?
We call them masks, and that's to hide our identities on stage to reinforce the collective identity of Codex Serafini as a whole.
Oh,
so we never, in things like podcasts and the odd people will mention that we're in the band, but it's not in terms of marketing and public facing. We don't ever put our names on anything. We don't have our individual names on the record. We'll have symbols. When we played a festival recently, and they asked for our individual names because we had to sign individual contractor agreements, and we put all of our surnames as Serafini, so that when they put on the lineup who the band members were, it was this person Serafini, that person Serafini.
Yeah. Different version of the Ramones.
Yeah.
All right. So here is the Mask Marauders. Keep the mask that fits from Codex Serafini. All right. So what was that song about?
So that song is about identity, is about the related to the album as a whole, which is about the struggles that we face as individuals and as a collective. Often we're having to perform for people and fit into certain scenarios and fit into people's expectations of us, and ultimately it comes down to the one that fits for us. So we need to keep hold of that and have more confidence in ourselves, in what our interests are, in who we want to be around, and not necessarily be chained by the past or family or anything like that, which might deter us from pursuing that newfound vibration that we have.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned that you were playing saxophone on that song, right?
Yes, yes,
And any other instruments or just sax? I mean,
just
that's enough,
sax.
but that's enough. Yeah.
Yeah, just sax.
Oh, great, great. Yeah. So is the the land that, or the reality that is depicted in the band, is that related to sort of what we've been talking about a little bit in terms of animism or alien worlds, or if so, how would it, does it fit in? Is that part of the what you're exploring in the band? I guess that's another way of asking the question.
Yeah, I think so, because we have it as this collective identity. So we try and understand, okay, what is Codex Serafini as a whole entity, but as a channel for this creative output. So I think for us, when obviously the music doesn't just happen, we work hard at it. We spend many hours creating, fine tuning everything. But when the ideas start to come out, it is this sense of tapping into a force that's greater than us. And I think the creative force in general is something like an animistic exercise. When I play my saxophone, it's not just an instrument that I'm picking up. It has its tendencies. It has a spirit to it. I can't just play any other saxophone. I mean, I could do practically, but I wouldn't want to, because I've developed this long relationship with this instrument. And it's the same with other people with their instruments, and the way in which we tap into lots of our different interests musically, but it feels like we are engaging in that collective well. So it's not just that we're kind of bringing lots of different things and trying to smush them all together, but it's what naturally unfolds out of us being tapped in and connected to the inner and outer nature.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's interesting that you're musically a collective, and we've been talking a little bit about sort of mycelium networks or greater connections, and then de-emphasizing the individual, which is also very mushroom-like, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels organic when people ask what our writing process is like. It is mycelial. We allow it to unfold, and we'll have. I think the longest track that we have on this album is maybe 9 minutes, but on our last album we had a track that was 15 minutes long, and that had come from something that was like a 45-minute jam, hour-long jam, where things were just unfolding, and it felt very unrestricted. this had a bit more focus in this album, but it still comes out of, okay, we spent, I think in total, about 30 hours in studios writing. And when we write, it is that someone brings something, almost like a spore, a piece of inoculated grain, will come into the substrate of the band. Something starts happening. It might be a riff, it might be a beat that someone brings, and then it starts to grow and it starts to build organically, and it finds where it needs to go without being directed from a top down. We never say, we want to make a song that sounds like this, and we want it to be, have, 3 minutes at the beginning that's doing this, 3 minutes in the middle that's doing that. We let it unfold, and then we go, okay, that was pretty cool. How could we make it more like a song? What could we do to shift it in a way that formulates what we just want out of it, for it to sound better, for it to be a bit more punchy, for it to have a bit more structure? But it comes from that point of after it has been allowed to unfold.
Right. Do you have any practices or recommendations for different mushroom or combinations for this creative process or fostering the connection that we've been talking about?
Yeah, I do think lion's mane with psilocybin is a really good combination for creativity, because I think it can help to potentially sharpen the intention with mushrooms and have a bit more say, a bit more directionality in that experience with the mushrooms if you're adding in the lion's mane. And I think what's happening with the gut and the brain, functional connectivity, certainly in terms of keeping time, responding to a note that someone else has just played, finding what harmonies work from both a musical harmonistic level, what sounds correct, and then also what sounds pleasing, what's aesthetically pleasing. So I think that's where there's the good balance of the psilocybin helping with that ego modulation. And that's what I find with music is, particularly being in a band where you're jamming, I need to have some ego because I'm holding a saxophone and I'm blowing into it and I'm moving my fingers. So there needs to be a concept of me in the picture in order to channel whatever's being channeled into the physicality of an instrument. But there needs to be enough ego reduction so that I'm able to sit in this place of flux and respond. Where, okay, there is music happening and I am there as a physical cog in the machine of the music happening, but ultimately we are creating something as a whole. And so I do think bands can ultimately break down. Often people talk about big egos in bands from a personality point of view. That guy's got a big ego, right? And then, when a band gets bigger and fame goes to people's heads and all of that. But I think if we think in terms of the ego as the concept of self, how beneficial that can be. And often there are these bands which will engage more in the aesthetic that we're engaging in, with masks, with robes, to take away that individual, to not be necessarily like a front person, although me and the singer do fill that role of being front people. But I also think that takes the pressure off as well. So with the addition of something like psilocybin, you're able to mediate that, keep the ego at bay, and fine tune it to where, okay, that flow can really start to happen.
Yeah. And almost, and I don't know, like wearing robes and masks almost gives it almost like a ritualistic sense too. Like, you're doing some sort of ritual. And if you were, what would the ritual be with the band, do you think? Or
We
if you were in, or if you were, I'm sure you've thought of this.
we do occasionally refer to it as ritualistic psych. For us, it's related to that sonic ritual where we are paying respect at the beginning to wherever it comes from, the essence of noise, of creating a sonic environment that starts to conjure something where it's taking people in the audience out of themselves, start to create that kind of boundlessness between yourself and the sound, really introduce the sound as this almost meditative like procession that is bringing people into that space. And then we change it up, we play with it, we have quite a lot of fun. So I think it's we try to bring about that ritualized sense of seriousness and connection and importance to the music, whilst also not getting too bogged down in that, and recognizing that the joy is an extremely important part of the whole experience, and having fun in that connection allows it to, I think, tap into something a bit deeper.
Yeah. So, tell me about your work as the Fungi Consultant. I mean, how are people? How do you? What are your offerings? I guess I should say.
So I have been offering personalized consultations where I'm leading people through what I like to say is an understanding of how mushrooms can benefit you in a whole lifestyle sense. So we'll look at, I'm really interested in people's current routines, what supplements they're taking, what their diet's like, what pre-existing medication they're on. And there I can start to offer protocols with different types of functional mushrooms, and always talk about it in a complementary sense. It's never offered in an alternative way. It's always just offering that to help bolster people's health journeys. And then as well, I have been working with brands to formulate different products and providing education for clinicians who are looking to utilize functional mushrooms in their healthcare plans, and also with people training in the microdosing space in the USA who want to incorporate functional mushrooms as an adjunct with things like microdose stacking. So for me, education is where I'm really interested at the moment. I'm in the process of developing some courses with a few different people. So, doing talks as well is something I really enjoy. I really enjoy assisting consumers with understanding, okay, what's actually going on. There's a lot of different words thrown about, different terminologies, different ways of marketing these functional mushrooms. So it's trying to create a situation that just gives the consumer a bit more confidence when it comes to purchasing functional mushrooms.
Yeah. And if people are interested in consulting with you, where would be the best way to connect with you for that service?
Yeah, so you can send me an email at oli@thefungiconsultant.com. There's a contact form on the website, thefungiconsultant.com, Instagram as well. You can reach me through there.
Oh, wonderful. And so should we do an outtake on the other song that the Codex song about
Yes.
pitying them for giving life, and what is this song? I'm almost afraid to ask what this song is about because I think I know, but
So this is again, the song, that the album Mother, Give Your Children Sanity is about the struggles that we have with the mother archetype, with Mother Earth, with being born, with the pressure of providing, of having children, that relationship between the child and the mother, that tension, and I think trying to be a bit more compassionate with that pity.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the song that I think sounds a little bit about, at least the vocals sound a little bit about Sushi and the Banshees esque,
Yes.
which I was a big fan of back in the day. But that's why
Yeah.
I heard this and it's like, wow, that sounds. I mean, it's a little bit more rockin'. I mean, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
it's not. But yeah, no, I really like the vocals and your work on this song and. Thanks for everything, man.
Awesome. Awesome.
You've got all the bases covered.
Thank you.
Mushrooms and consulting and musician. It must be very exciting times in the UK for you all.
It is, yeah. It certainly is interesting being in this country with, there's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of stuff happening with psychedelics, and yeah, not an easy country to be in. But for me, that creativity, that spark that we still do have just about in the UK, it does really connect us all.
All right. All right, Ollie. Well, thanks. Here is, why don't you introduce this last song and we'll take it away on the outro.
So this is Pitying Them for Giving Life by Codex Serafini.
Thanks, Ollie.
Thank you so much.